And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host, Demo, and it's time for another Commander Quick Brew. I'm delving into Forgotten Realms here. I haven't really talked about it much at all, and there's a lot to talk about. And I've decided I'm going to wait till the whole set is spoiled and then sort of do a big review at the end. Until then, I'm just going to do some quick brews and maybe even a couple of deck techs. And is it just me, or did we not just do this a couple of weeks ago? I mean, Modern Horizons 2 just came out a couple of weeks ago, didn't it? I mean, man, these sets are really on top of each other. So I'm starting out this time with Oswald Fiddlebender, 1 and a white. Legendary creature, Gnome Artificer. He's a 2/2 and has magical tinkering. And these abilities, the italic abilities that are typically abilities that you would see across a whole set, I think there's going to be a whole lot of one-shots. Like, this might be the only card that actually has that magical tinkering ability. So I don't really know how relevant that is. But the actual ability, pay 1 white, tap, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. So if that ability seems familiar at all, it's because it's very similar to a birthing pod. Essentially, Oswald Fiddlebender is a birthing pod for artifacts. And we all know how fantastic birthing pod is. And man, I gotta say right off, I'm super glad they made this guy mono white, okay? For 2 reasons. One, mono white could really use some more interesting, unique, and maybe powerful commanders like this. And also, it makes it a little more limiting. Like, this is a really good ability, and if you opened it up to too many colors, I think it would just be busted. Essentially, having a birthing pod for artifacts on your commander. I mean, we all know what happened to Prime Speaker Vannifar. That just became I combo off commander almost instantaneously. I really hope the case isn't that with Oswald. I don't think so. I don't know how many artifacts there are that you can do stuff like this with. For me, this is just a value thing. I love value decks. I love toolbox decks. Birthing Pod's a really fantastic card for that reason, and Oswald is very similar. First of all, Oswald goes in a ton of decks. I mean, man, he goes in all those Esper artifact decks. He's going to go in. You can sacrifice an artifact to go get something you really want. He goes in an Oscar deck for sure. This guy's so good in an Oscar deck. Everyone who's got one, this is an auto include. He goes in my Gerard deck, which is sort of a sacrifice artifact recursion type theme. So he's definitely going in there. He's really great in the 99 of a lot of decks. As a commander, I'm just doing value-y artifacts. I'm just doing the Wellsprings. I sacrifice one of the Wellsprings, get extra value out of it, then go get a Filigree Familiar, get value out of that, sacrifice it, go get a Solemn Simulacrum. Just lots of great value. Obviously, you're going to want to untap this guy as much as you can. 1,000-year elixir, which I've mentioned probably 100 times on this channel. I don't even think I'm being hyperbolic there. Absolute must in this deck, and you can go get it, which is even better. I can go sacrifice my Microsynth Wellspring, go get my 1,000-year elixir, and then immediately use it, untap my Oswald so I can use him again. So I think the build around here is fairly obvious. I'm a little concerned about the combo potential here. I don't know if there is any, like Tashar, which again, this is another card that would probably go in a Tashar deck. Tashar was one of those commanders that in the beginning, no one really saw any combo potential there. It sort of just seemed like a good value commander, and that's why I built a Tashar deck. And then, someone figured out the combo, and, then it just becomes a combo commander, and you can't really do anything else with it because everyone just expects you're running the combos. I'm hoping this doesn't happen with Oswald because I think he's a really interesting and fun, unique commander to build around. Next up today, Orcus, Prince of Undeath. X2, black and a red. So a Rakdos commander, demon, 5/3, flying and trample. When Orcus, Prince of Undeath, enters the battlefield, choose 1. Each other creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. You lose X life. Or return up to X target creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. So, I mean, it's interesting, but man, this is a tough one. I like the modal part of it. That to me is, okay, now I have 2 things that I can build around, or 2 options that I can go with depending on which situation. As a commander, the tough thing about Orcus is, he has an ETB, but his ETB is reliant on X. So you can't blink him. You know, there's no cheating here. You actually have to pay the X. So even if you just want the X to be 1, this is now a 5 mana commander, and you can give each other creature -1/-1 till end of turn, and you lose 1 life. That's not very good. Return 1 target creature card with total mana value 1 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains haste. Oof, like that's very underwhelming. I mean, the permanent return creatures to play, this is not until the end of turn. You permanently return them to play. That's a really powerful ability, but man, I'm just thinking if you want to get some serious value out of this, pay 4 is X. Now that's 8 mana that you have to spend, even just without commander tax. That's 8 mana, and I can give each other creature -4/-4 until end of turn. That's just not very good at all. Or I return up to 4 target creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's so limiting because you can't return 4 creatures with mana value 4. Right? That would be pretty good. I think that would definitely be worth paying 8 mana for. You can't. You can only return 4 creatures with total mana value 4. So that means you can return 4 creatures with a mana value of 1, or 1 creature with a mana value of 4, or 2 creatures with mana value of 2, and so on. I mean, that's not a lot. And the reusability is the part that really kind of bugs me. I mean, it's good. There's definitely some stuff you can do here. That second ability in particular, there's definitely some stuff you can build around, but what I don't like about it is I have to play it. I have to cast it for a whole bunch of mana. I get the effect, and then my commander just sits there, and blinking does nothing. I have to return it to my hand and recast it. There's not a lot of cheating here, so, you know, maybe this becomes a ritual commander. That's really the only thing I can think of, like a mana geyser. I mean, black and red are really good at rituals. So maybe that's how you build this commander, is I put mana geyser, I put seething song, I put bubbling muck, like I just mentioned in my 10 cards video. Cards like that. And so I can just do a one-shot with my commander and then use Sanctum of Eternity or something, or Erratic Portal to return it to my hand so I can do it again. I think that's probably the only way to go with this, because you really need to get up to like 8-9 mana before this really becomes a usable ability. I mean, the return X target creature cards with total mana value X or less really limits this, right? So now I pay 8 mana to get 1 4-drop out of my graveyard. That's not great. And if you want to get something big like a Rune-Scarred Demon or a Shieldred or something, now you're going to be paying 11 mana. That's a lot of mana just to cheat a Shieldred out of your graveyard. I would go a bunch of ritual effects, like the one-shots, because you don't need a bunch of mana all the time. You just need a bunch of mana just to cast your commander, get the effect you want, and then maybe you can bounce them to your hand and recast them again and do it again. And lastly, this time, Krydle of Baldur's Gate. And again, I'm a big Forgotten Realms fan, so seeing stuff like Baldur's Gate is very nostalgic for me. Krydle of Baldur's Gate is a blue and a black human elf rogue. So it's a human elf, so I'm guessing that means it's a half elf, which means obviously, you know, the dad was a human, the mom was an elf, essentially, right? Half and half. And I think they probably didn't want to, there's already a whole bunch of new creature types, and I think they didn't want to overwhelm too much. So rather than put half elf, they just decided to make a human and an elf. And that way Krydell can get the benefits from human stuff and the benefits from elf stuff. So that's good. I think the benefits from rogue stuff is definitely going to be more significant here, though, because Krydell is a 1/3, and whenever Krydell of Baldur's Gate deals combat damage to a player, that player loses 1 life and mills a card. Then you gain 1 life and scry 1. So that in itself is a good ability. Obviously, you want to make your commander unblockable, get in for damage. I mean, this is a little familiar to Anawan. That's the only thing. Like, you know, there's a lot of rogues that are going to fit this strategy, but there's already a commander that does that, so there's a little bit of overlap there. I wouldn't go that route at all. The fact that it's milling a card really is insignificant, I think, but you definitely could put in cards like Diluvian Primordial and Memory Plunder and stuff like that that takes advantage of your opponents having stuff in their graveyard that you might want. Xerath San, I think, is a perfect fit in this deck, a card that I talked about in my biggest commander surprises video that I was really surprised wasn't more popular because I thought it was interesting. Is a rogue, has that sort of rogue ninjutsu ability, which I think definitely works in this deck because you're probably going to have a lot of rogues. And also when it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So I think that is a fantastic fit in the deck. But that second ability is really, I think, what you're going to mostly be building the deck around. Whenever you attack, you may pay 2. If you do, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So you have a commander that can make your creatures unblockable. And this is whenever you attack, not with Krydell. It's any creature. Whenever you attack with a creature, you can pay 2 and make it unblockable. So this is unblockable tribal, I think, essentially is where you want to go with it. You're definitely going to have a lot of rogues, so I think some rogue support is definitely going to help. But there's just so many creatures in Dimir colors. I don't think this is an accident that they made this guy Dimir. Thief of Sanity is definitely going in this deck. Dimir Cutpurse is definitely going in this deck. Blizzard Spectre is definitely going in this deck. Shadow Mage Infiltrator is definitely going in this deck, right? And these are all just black and blue creatures. I mean, there's so many creatures that can fit into a deck of I'm just attacking and I want to get in for damage and get some advantage off of it. And then on top of that, you know, you throw in your Bidens of Thassa and your Coastal Piracies to get more advantage. Night Dealings is a personal favorite of mine where I can use it to tutor every turn. There really is a lot of support in a deck like this. You know, it's hard to say how popular these commanders are going to be. I really don't even want to guess anymore. After doing my Commander Surprises video, I've really realized that there's a few that it's incredibly obvious that they're going to be really popular. But other than that, it sometimes can be really surprising how popular a commander could be. I think this is an easy build around, has a really neat ability. Maybe it's a little underwhelming, you know, just making one creature unblockable. I mean, obviously Krydell can make himself unblockable, so you can just do that. You even, I guess, could go a Voltron strategy with this, although just having a 1/3 isn't fantastic. But getting in every turn and your opponent loses 1 life and mills a card and you gain 1 life and scry 1, I mean, that's okay. I think more so you're going to want to put a bunch of other creatures in this deck, though, that you're going to want to make unblockable. So that is it for today. My first Commander Quick Brew for Forgotten Realms. I got a few more coming up and I got a lot to talk about with this set. I'm going to save it till the end though, so stay tuned for that. But that is it for today and thanks for tuning in.